Some children don't grow up slowly, they are forced to grow up all at once. Not because they were ready, but because life didn't give them a choice. While other kids were learning how to laugh without thinking, you were learning how to read the room, how to stay silent, how to hold everything in so nothing falls apart. You became the calm one in chaos, the responsible one, the one people relied on, even when you were too young to carry it. No one asked how you felt. No one noticed what it was costing you. And now, years later, you still live that same pattern. You handle everything on your own. You struggle to ask for help. You feel guilty when you rest. People call you strong, but they don't see the truth. You were never given the chance to be anything else. Because deep down, you're not just strong. You're a child who learned that their feelings come second and survival comes first. Let's talk about the psychology of the child who had to be strong too early. Some childhoods don't break loudly. They fade quietly. From the outside, everything looks fine. A quiet child, a well-behaved child, the kind adults never have to worry about. But that silence wasn't peace. It was pressure. A child sitting alone, not asking for toys, not making a mess, not running around like other kids. Not because they didn't want to, but because somewhere along the way, they learned that being easy was safer than being real. Toys were there, but untouched. Laughter was there, but held back, because their mind was busy with things no child should ever carry. They were watching everything, the tone in voices, the tension in the air, the small changes that meant something was wrong. So they adjusted, they became careful, they became quiet, they became mature, far too early. While other children were playing without thinking, this child was thinking about everything. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I make it worse? What if I become the problem? So they stayed small, invisible, controlled. Sometimes they sat alone, not because they liked being alone, but because it felt easier than feeling unwanted. And people called them good. Such a mature kid, so understanding. But no one stopped to ask, why does a child need to understand so much? Because this wasn't maturity, this was survival. This was a child slowly learning that their needs come second, that their feelings are too much, that being themselves comes with a cost. And that's how a childhood disappears. Not all at once, but piece by piece, until one day, there's no child left in the child at all. Some children are not naturally quiet. They learn to be quiet, not in a single moment, but slowly, after being ignored too many times, after being told they're too sensitive, after realizing their words don't change anything, so they stop trying. At first, they still speak. They still explain how they feel. They still hope someone will understand. But when their feelings are dismissed or turned into a problem, something inside them begins to shut down. They start choosing silence over expression, not because they have nothing to say, but because saying it feels pointless. They learn to keep things in, to swallow their emotions, to act like everything is fine, even when it isn't. You won't hear them complain. You won't see them create scenes. They become the easy child, the one who doesn't need attention. But what no one sees is how much they're holding inside. Every hurt, unspoken. Every fear, unshared. Every emotion, pushed down so deep that even they stop understanding it. And over time, silence becomes their identity. They grow up believing that their voice doesn't matter, that their feelings are a burden, that speaking up only makes things worse. So even as adults, they hesitate. They overthink every word. They stay quiet in rooms where they should speak. They struggle to say what they need, even when it's hurting them. Because deep down, they're still that child who learned one painful lesson very early. It's safer to stay quiet than to risk being unheard. There is a point in some childhoods where a child stops expecting emotional support, not because they don't need it, but because they stop believing they will get it. They learn to sit with their own feelings, to calm themselves down, to fix what is breaking inside, alone. No one teaches them this. Life does. When comfort is missing too many times, when questions go unanswered, when pain is noticed but not held, the child slowly adapts. They stop reaching out. They start saying, "I'm fine," even when they are not. They handle their tears in private. They process their fear without telling anyone. On the outside, it looks like strength. People admire how independent they are. how they don't depend on anyone, how they always manage things on their own. But what people don't see is the cost, because emotional independence didn't come from confidence. It came from necessity. They learned early that no one is coming to rescue their feelings, so they became their own comfort, their own listener, their own support system. And slowly, they stopped asking for help, even when they needed it the most. Not because they don't trust people, but because deep down, they still feel like a burden when they do. So they carry everything quietly. They fix themselves quietly. They survive quietly. And over time, they don't just become independent. They become emotionally self-contained, locked inside themselves, functioning, but alone. And that is where most people misunderstand them. They look strong, but they were just left alone, long enough to learn how to be strong. There comes a stage in some lives where pain is no longer expressed. It is hidden, not because it disappears, but because showing it never changed anything. At first they still tried. They showed their hurt. They looked for comfort. They waited for someone to notice. But slowly, they learned a hard truth. People are busy. People move on. People don't always see what you don't say clearly. So they adjusted. They started smiling even when things were breaking inside. They started saying, "I'm okay," when they were not. They learned how to sit in silence while carrying storms within them. No one teaches a child how to hide pain. It happens naturally when expressing it feels unsafe or useless. So they build a mask, a calm face, a normal routine, a version of themselves that looks untouched. But inside, nothing is untouched. Every ignored feeling gets buried deeper. Every moment of hurt gets stored quietly. Every emotion that should have been released stays trapped. And the most difficult part is this: they become so good at hiding it that even people closest to them start believing they are fine, strong, calm, unbothered. But strength is not always what it seems. Sometimes it is just silence that has learned how to survive. And behind that silence, there is still a person, still feeling everything, just no longer allowed to show it, because they learned early that pain is safer when it is hidden than when it is seen. There are children who don't get the time to just be children, because responsibility finds them too early, not gradually, but suddenly. One moment they are small, and the next moment, life expects them to understand things they were never taught. They start noticing problems at home. They start feeling tension that doesn't belong to them. They start stepping into roles that were never meant for their age. So they adjust. They become the helper, the fixer, the one who understands. Don't ask questions without being told. While other children are thinking about games, they are thinking about solutions. While others are resting, they are quietly carrying pressure they cannot explain. No one officially gives them responsibility. It just gets transferred silently over time. And because they are capable, because they don't complain, because they manage somehow, it becomes normal for everyone to expect more from them. But inside, something changes. They stop feeling light. They stop feeling free. They start feeling like they are always on duty, even when no one asks them to be. And the hardest part is this: they don't even realize when childhood ended. There was no moment of choice, no line they crossed knowingly, just a slow shift from being taken care of to taking care of everything else. And years later, they still carry that same pattern. Always responsible, always alert, always holding things together. Even when they are tired, even when they are overwhelmed, they keep going. Because somewhere deep inside, they learn too early that if they don't handle it, no one else will. For some people, safety is not a feeling they grow up with. It is something they try to learn much later in life. Because when a child experiences too much uncertainty, too much emotional pressure, too many moments where they don't know what will happen next, their mind never fully relaxes. Even in calm situations, they stay alert. They observe everything: tone of voice, facial expressions, small changes in behavior that others don't even notice. It is not overthinking. It is survival training that never turned off. So even when life becomes stable, even when things are finally okay, they still feel uneasy inside. Peace feels unfamiliar, calm feels temporary, and happiness feels like something that could disappear at any moment. They struggle to trust comfort. They struggle to fully relax around people. Because deep inside, Their system is always preparing for something to go wrong. No one sees this struggle from the outside, because they function normally. They smile, they talk, they manage life. But internally, they are always checking, always adjusting, always bracing. And that is the hidden cost. They don't just live life, they monitor it. And over time, this becomes their normal state. Not because they want to live this way, but because their early experiences taught them one thing very clearly: safety is not guaranteed. So you must stay ready all the time. And even when nothing is wrong, their mind still waits for something to go wrong. There is a pattern that begins very early in some lives, where a child starts believing that everything is their fault. Not because someone clearly tells them, but because no one explains otherwise. When things go wrong, they look at themselves first. When someone is upset, they assume it is because of them. When emotions rise in the room, they quietly turn inward and start searching for what they did wrong. Over time, this becomes automatic. They stop questioning situations and start questioning themselves. Was I too much? Did I say something wrong? Should I have stayed quiet? Even when it has nothing to do with them, they still carry the weight of it, because blaming themselves feels familiar. And strangely, it feels easier than accepting that some things are out of their control. No one teaches them this habit. It forms quietly from repeated moments of misunderstanding, silence, and emotional confusion. And as they grow older, this pattern grows stronger. They apologize too quickly. They overthink too deeply. They take responsibility for emotions that were never theirs to carry. Even in situations where they are not at fault, they still feel guilty inside, because somewhere in their early life, their mind learned a simple rule: if something is wrong, it must be me. And this belief becomes heavy. It affects how they see relationships. It affects how they respond to conflict. It affects how they treat themselves. But the truth is different. Not everything that went wrong was their fault. Not every emotion around them was their responsibility. They were just a child, trying to make sense of things they were never meant to carry. And yet they still carry it, long after the moment has passed. Some people don't realize that growing up is not always the same as healing. They grow older, they take on responsibilities, they build a life, they appear strong from the outside, but inside, something remains unchanged. A deep emotional tiredness that never fully leaves. It is not physical exhaustion. It is something quieter, heavier, the kind that sits inside you, even when everything is still. They wake up every day and function. They work, they talk, they meet people, they do what is expected of them. But beneath all of that, there is a constant feeling of being drained, not from one event, but from years of holding things in, years of managing emotions alone, years of being strong when they didn't want to be. And the hardest part is, they don't even know how to explain it, because on paper, their life looks fine. But emotionally, they feel like they are always running on empty. Rest doesn't fix it completely. Breaks don't fully heal it, because this tiredness is not from doing too much. It is from feeling too much for too long without support. So they keep going. They learn how to smile through it, how to push through it, how to survive it quietly. But deep inside, there is always a part of them that is exhausted from being strong for so long. And even as adults, they still carry that same child within them, the one who never truly got to rest. Emotionally, there comes a point in life where they don't need more pressure. They don't need more expectations. They don't need more advice about being strong. What they need is the truth that they were never too sensitive. They were just never properly supported. The truth that staying quiet didn't mean they had nothing to say. It meant no one made it safe enough to speak. The truth that being responsible too early was not a sign of maturity, it was a sign of circumstance. And most importantly, the truth that they were just a child, trying to survive emotions they were never taught to understand. Because for so long, they believed something was wrong with them. They blamed themselves for feeling too much. They questioned their reactions. They doubted their own emotions. But the reality is simple. Nothing about them was broken. They adapted. They adjusted. They learned patterns that helped them survive, but also made life heavier later on. And now, as adults, they carry habits that no longer serve them, but once protected them. The truth they need to hear is not about changing everything overnight. It is about understanding where it all began. That their silence had a reason. That their independence had a cost. That their emotional exhaustion is not weakness. It is history still living inside them. And maybe the most important truth of all, is that they don't have to keep proving their strength anymore, because they were already strong, long before anyone noticed, and they are allowed now to finally feel what they were forced to ignore. And maybe now it all starts to make sense. That child you were is still somewhere inside you, not gone, just unheard for a very long time. Everything you learned, being quiet, being strong, hiding pain, it was never your personality, it was your protection. It helped you survive moments that were too heavy, when you had no other way to cope. But you don't have to live in that survival mode forever. You don't have to keep proving your strength through silence. You don't have to carry emotions alone anymore. You don't have to blame yourself for how you learned to survive. Because real strength is not in holding everything inside. It is in finally understanding yourself and allowing yourself to feel without fear, to accept what happened without letting it control who you become next. And maybe this is where healing quietly begins, not by forgetting the past, but by no longer letting it define you. Because you were never just the pain you went through. You were always more than it.